All right, so like I said, we're going to start, many of you have already started on this. I want to do a quick run through of just the basics, but so that way I can more effectively explain the actual full details of the project. So we're working on our personal badge. Excuse me, whether you not you've started from your own sketch, whether or not you've imported an image, whatever. So let me switch over to Fusion, see more clearly. All right, so I started the sketch already, and I imported an image of this adorable Mothman Loves You patch because Mothman loves you. So I went up to Canvas, imported the image, insert from computer, found my Mothman Love. I'll just cancel that because I don't need to add another one. And of course, when you do that, it of course asks you for the start plane, and I'm using the XY plane. Select there. It dropped in. It was a little too small, so I recalibrated. So remember to calibrate your image. Go to calibrate, and you can select 2 points on the canvas. It'll show you 80. If you wanted that, say 60, something like that, there you go. It'll resize, but the sketch already started was at 88 millimeters, so I'll stick with that. Once I began, I'll go back into my edit sketch. If it'll let me. What's going on here? It's not allowing me to go back into edit sketch. What's going on here? There we go. That was weird. All right, so just to show you the progress, mainly what I wanted to show you as a start point here is I want to be able to show you how to make like text on here, as well as the edges, and then also add like features like the keyhole, stuff like that for making this a keychain or whatever. So to hide the badge for a moment, a couple things. I got the most of the profile done. I don't have legs on it or the eyes all defined or anything like that. And I did part of the heart. So I stopped here for a couple reasons. One, because I want to get underway, but you can see the difference between closed sketches and open sketches. The difference being that if it's a closed sketch, it can be extruded as a solid body. Now, there are different features, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But a closed sketch will have this blue hue to it. When you mouse over it, it should show as a black outline. Same here, right in the center. But if you're just mousing over the line itself, it won't. It'll just highlight the line. So if I select that, you can see because it's a fit point spline, it'll bring back up my handlebars and all that such. I can make adjustments. The head and the rest of the body and such are not. Some of the features, I added like a little circle here, and you can see the little patches on there and that sort, and I'll make like the arm and such anyway. But a couple things I wanted to show you how to fix, or rather how to continue. So one of the things is this heart. I don't want to have to draw all the little features. Of course, it's not like it's very complex, but some things that you can use some other tools you can use. So one of the things being, of course, the mirror tool. I did half of it. Let's let the program do the work. So in order for the mirror tool to work, which is this double triangle, select that. Your toolbox will come up. You'll have your objects. You select the object. Next one is a mirror line. Well, you have to have a line for this to work. But I don't want to add an unnecessary line here. So when I go to my line tool or press L, I can draw a line straight up and down. And you can see as I start to mouse this over, you can see it already snaps these little this green dotted line down to the other point. That's because both of these are straight up and down from one another. But that would be a solid line. Now that closes the heart. Great. Let me hit enter finish. I don't want it to be that. I can toggle this line into a construction line. And this is why you'd want to use construction lines in this case. You can either toggle it on the toolbox over here or press X on your keyboard. Now that sketch is still open. Now that sketch is open rather, and that is a dotted line. That means that sketch is there, or that sketch line is there for reference, but it's not going to interfere with my line. So it's excellent to be able to use sketch lines and such to give yourself reference points. All right, so I can go to the mirror tool, select object, that one, mirror line, my sketch line. Now I have that, let the program do the work. Okay, and of course, you're going to see all these additional little markers here. It does tons of them. That is a constraint. If you go up to the top of your bar or your top toolbar constraints, that is the symmetry constraint. That also means that if I make alterations to one of this side, it will do it for both sides. So they are symmetrical, they are linked. I'm going to leave it where it is. That's fine. Super duper. All those construction, all those constraint points does kind of make your eyes go crossways, but there we are. Now, this is one of the issues of making multiple sketches. Despite them all being on the same plane, you can see right now as I try to mouse over, because this is all on the same sketch, the bottom of the heart and the top of the heart are treated as two separate sketch objects because there's a shared line going through. So in this case, while it's not a problem right now because it's not very complex, if you were planning on making this a much more complex thing, you might want to make the heart on a separate sketch so that when you go to extrude it, it will be treated differently. Let's see here. So one of the other ways to approach this, where is the thingy thing? It's pretty simple. All right. So like I said, this might be one of the cases where it might have been better to create this sketch on a separate sketch so that it's a different layer and you can toggle the visibility of it. Right now, this is all the same thing. And if I want to do that, I can start a new sketch and just copy and paste this on there. But let's stick with what we got right now. So that's using the mirror tool. Cool. That's now closed. The little heart's closed. Let me open up my canvas again. I'll make like a couple little things here. I'm going to try to snap a couple of circles here. Great. I can make the eyes a little bit better. But let's close up this sketch so at least I can actually make this a finished thing. So now I have these 3 points. Now I can either add some lines, or I can also drag this. I can click and drag and pull this point around. I'm not going to have a lot of motion with it. Plus, I kind of like where it is, so I'm not going to mess with that. Let's leave it where it is, and I'll just add in some additional lines. So a couple things you can do with that. If you've got a line going and you don't want to draw it by hand, go to Modify. You can use the Extend tool, and that literally just extends an existing line to what it assumes is going to be the next. It kind of takes the geometry and trajectory of that current line. You mouse over, and you can see this little red line that pops up. Select there, bam, it throws in an additional line, and it already almost connects over there. So to finish that line, because I still have the tool active, I can now mouse over that line, or I can drag that vertex to the adjoining line. Why not let it snap closed? Now, the whole top is closed. Convenient. This got to be weird. I don't know where that little angle line came in. Woo. So let me trim that off of there. Hit escape. That all is still good. Let's go to trim. I just need to nip that little chunk off. Great. Go back and use extend again. Extends the line to the next. You can see you can keep going because it assumes that you want to extend, or Fusion assumes that you want to extend that line to the next point that it would potentially cross. Again, Fusion tries to be intuitive, but sometimes that intuition gets to be problematic. All right, that's all closed. Let's use extend again to close that up right there. Great. Now I have this all closed. This is all a closed sketch. All right. So a couple things I will note, and I'm going to show you how to address these. Fusion works great on a lot of things, but anytime lines cross one another, in this case, I mean, not that they are intersecting, but they go back and forth over another, that can cause problems. So you see how these are overlapped here, and I'll bring my canvas back up. That's just for me using sorry, fit points blind. The word fell out of my head. I might be better off editing those out, or at least trimming a chunk away. So I might go back and use like the trim, and you see the problem here is, oh no, that's going to trim all of it. That's a problem. So if I needed to edit that away, what I'm unfortunately will probably have to do is draw a line between here. Now I should be able to isolate that and trim that away. I'm going to see if I can just use that line as a construction line. So I toggled that, hit X. Let's see if that works now. Good, still does. So that way I can use that line, trim that away. Yes, it's going to give me a warning because constraints were changed. That's okay. But now that's missing. We're good. That should, so I can go along and do all that I'm going to show you what can happen without. All right, so this is all closed sketches. Mothman is close, but not quite there. Let's work with some extrusions. So let me hit finish sketch, save. So I'm going to add myself some notes. Mothman outline done. Great. Now I can start to play with some extrusions. So like I said before, you can stack extrusions as well. And that's how you can make multi-level things here. So let's start with resizing, and I'm going to go hit the home button so I get a 3/4 view. It's easier to see what I'm doing. Just start extruding. Mouse over the extrude tool, or as the pop-up shows you can just press E. That works. So most of this is one body, or rather, sorry, one closed sketch. So the head is one closed sketch. Let's say, I don't know, 3. All right. Now, right now, that also came up as green. That's probably not how yours is going to look. I'll address that in a moment. First, I want to talk about the toolbox here. So you have, first off, types. Extrude and thin extrude. I'm going to explain thin extrude in a moment. This is a way where you can extrude just a line that is not a closed sketch. So I was kind of lying to you earlier, but not entirely. Your profile selection is obviously the profile. If you want to add more, you can keep going, but that's not what I want to do. So back out of that. Oops. Since I accidentally hit Control Z instead of I should have just zeroed that out. Just as a reminder, you can go back up, hit the extrude, press E, or if it is a recent command, if you right click on your mouse, the recent tools or the most used tools will come up. Going straight up is the one that you just used. So I can repeat extrude. It's just a way to streamline what you're doing. Select that one again, go up to 3. Okay. I'm going to say start at profile plane. This will come in handy in a moment. You have some others, offset and object. Right now, we're going to leave this at profile plane at the start point. Direction, one-sided. You have 2 sides and symmetric. If you're making something extrude in both directions, right now we're just going to use one-sided. An extent type is distance, where you can either add it in numerically or use the drag slider. To object is it can snap to another object. We'll ignore that for right now. And all is just all the things. It will just snap to anything visible. We don't have anything visible, so ignore that. We're just going to stick with distance. Then there's your distance right there, 3 millimeters. You can also taper this. So you can add a inward taper or outward taper. Too much, and it will go nuts on you. Let's see about, wow, 3 is, even 3 is too much, huh? Okay, it's giving me it's giving me an error because of the complexity of the little Mothman beard. If this were a more simple form, it would be able to perform that much more effectively. But because of how complex this is, it gets weird. So we'll just leave it at 0. There we are. All right. Operation new body. Now, as we start to add more, it will automatically try to join them together. You can either leave them as all individual bodies and join them later, or just let the operation do it and join them as you go. I prefer to keep things separate in case I want to make individual operations and then join everything later. For me, I just prefer to work that way. With this project, doesn't really matter. It's however you prefer. So I'm going to keep it as new body. Great. Now, like I said, you finish one sketch extrusion and a Fusion assumes you're done with that sketch, so it hides it. Just go back to your browser, your hierarchy tree here, find the sketch, toggle the sketch visibility, and it'll pop back in. All right, so real quick, the reason this is coming up green and your default is probably coming up as this metallic silver that's because I was using the appearance toggle. That is pressing and holding shift and hitting in November. Whoops, I hit multiple things. Not what I meant to hit. That toggles it between automatically assigning colors to different components or appearances. We're going to talk about appearances in a minute, but appearances are basically how you can apply real world surfaces to the model so it looks like the real thing. It has no effect whatsoever on how it gets printed. It's just for modeling realism. So I'm going to leave it green because it's easier to see. for me. All right, great. So got all that. You can see also how it did not add that little notch there. That's because the heart was there that intersected. I should have made that a little bit higher. So don't know yet. So speaking of, let's go ahead and extrude the heart. What? Oh, whoops. I accidentally hit joint before. All right. Now, like I said, there's that line in there. I want to make sure that I'm getting both sides of the heart. All right. And we'll go up 2. So one issue, it's leaving that little notch there. I will need to go back into that first extrusion and actually alter that. So because these are only barely touching, they're not actually, or they're only adjacently touching, they're not actually overlapping. The operation is staying as new body. So I'll leave it at that. I want to go back and fix that. Go back and down in your down to the bottom of the screen, go to your history bar, right click on the previous one, go to edit feature, and now I can just make sure to select that little notch, boop, and it adds that little blip there. There we go. That's all. So now it makes sure to overlap. Great. So this is how you can keep adding different levels. Oops. Keep adding extrusions, and I want to make sure to get all of those. Now you see how these are red lines as it's intersecting this exact existing body? This is because you have the potential to cut into the body. Now here, you can just drag up or whatever. Now that these are joining, now you can see, or rather now that these could form a whole body, now the operation has changed to join. I can go back and manually go back to new body if I want to keep it that way. Fine. There we go. I can join all these later. Great. So we got a bunch of different features here. Again, I can always keep adding stuff. Let's do a couple more. I'll add the little antenna. We'll make that to 1. Then I'll go back inside to the intersections here. Select both of those, and we'll say 2. Again, it's going to try to join those. You can if you want, or leave it at new body. Doesn't matter. All right, so now I have these multiple things. So I do want to add some text and a larger diameter around it so I can make this more of a full badge. You do not have to make this a singular badge. This could just be a floating body if you want. Up to you. But in this case, a couple things I want to show you real quick is, one, I told you about the other extrude option. So let's save here, full extrudes. Just making some notes. Again, when you open the data panel, you open up your different versions. That's the little notes there for myself. Sketch started, Mothman outline done, full extrudes. Just to help you on your versions. All right, so I'm going to bring up the extrude bar again, but this time I want to play with the other tool, thin extrude. This is a way to make a single line a full body. So what it does is it kind of combines the extrude tool with the offset tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those 2 eyebrow lines. There we go. Now I have a couple of options. Right now, everything is default. Everything is staying where it was. I'm going to use the drag tool and drag upward. So I'm going to drag upwards up through the body. Now, right now, you can see how they've changed to red. Now, as I extrude through, the operation has gone to cut. That's because it assumes that because I've drugged those up through the body, I actually want to cut that away. So you can do that, or you can switch this to say like join, and it's going to be a thin extrude right there. Other things on here. This is extruding all the way from the bottom. What if I did want that to cut, but I didn't want it to cut all the way through? What if I just wanted it like a slight indentation? Well, this is where the parts where you kind of, this is one of the parts where you have to start kind of changing the way you would approach something rather than say like, okay, I drew this on a piece of wood and I want to cut this away. Well, I would need to like chisel down into it from the top. Yes, actually, that's a little bit closer to reality. In this, where I had extruded up from the top, from the bottom straight through, that's not how that works. You actually want to treat this a little bit more like how it would actually be carved in, kind of. So to do that, you can use some of the other options here. things like start. Start is at the profile plane. I can start this either going to say start to the bottom to object. I select the top here. It's now going to extrude starting at the top. And if I extrude upward, it's going to go all the way through. But that's still going to mess with me. So let's instead change to offset. I can offset that by, say, like 1 millimeter. Now what it's doing, let me go to side view here. There's 1 millimeter between where it started, the extrusion started, and where it's drawn and where it started. So I can actually start from right there. Really slick feature. And then I can go upward and cut through. That said, I can also use the object. Let me just zero all this out. Distance 0, because sometimes it does weird things if you don't zero it all out. I can start this at the top, and then I can instead, the sketch will begin, or that extrusion will begin at the very top. All right, what's going on here? Cannot complete extrusion. Why? What's your problem? It's giving me weirdness. All right, sometimes you have to restart the extrude. All right, let's do thin extrude. I have had problems doing that sometimes where you start from blank or you change stuff around, and if it gives you weird errors, sometimes it's best just to cancel that tool and start over. So now I'm going to start. The first thing I'm going to select is object. Select the top face here. Now when I extrude upwards, still give me the same error. What's your problem? I'm not sure why it's giving me that error. That's weird. Okay, well then ignore it. We'll just use the offset tool. Same thing I did before. We'll do an offset of 1 millimeter, and it starts going up. Let's go up 5. Doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. Direction, we're going to leave that as one-sided. Now, the other thing is extent type. Right now, it's been distance. You can use the same sort of selection features as before. So distance is just like adding and subtracting just numerically or using the slider. However, the parametric modeling option in this case would be extent type, selecting object, and I can select that top face. Now it's going to extrude those little cuts only to the top face. But the good thing about that is, and I'll just leave this as cut for right now because I want to show you something. Okay, it's going to cut all that, and we can also adjust the size of those, the diameter, or sorry, the thickness of those line cuts. That's fine. But if I had done this just by distance, say I put in 3 millimeters, so that's how thick it is, right to the top. If I decided, oh, you know what, I want this to be a little bit thicker, and I move the face up, I might now have to go back and change the dimensions of the extrude and everything. But in this case, because I used the extent type, let me open this back up, extent type to object, and selected the top face here. And again, I use the offset, so it is starting a little bit further, 1 millimeter away from the bottom. Now, if I go back and change that first extrusion, I could change this to 20 millimeters thick. Again, because I went back, changed this in the past on the history slider. It recalculates. It will always make that cut to the top of that face. So no matter how thick I make that cut, because I chose the extent type to the top of the face, it will always make it there. So that's one of those things. And if it's an option, choose that option. It makes it a little bit easier. I obviously don't need this to be 20 millimeters thick. Let's go back to 3 or 4 or something. There we go. So there we are. That final extrusion also, last thing I wanted to show you is you can also adjust how thick that is. And down toward the bottom here, it says wall thickness. Now, that's going to be 2 millimeters thick because the wall thickness is 1. It's an offsetting on either side of that line by 1 millimeter. So 2 millimeters total. So if I only wanted it to be 1 millimeter thick, I would say 0.5, and now it's a little 1 millimeter slide. There you go. So yeah, now it's kind of got a little adorable angry face or something. I don't know. So we'll add features and yada, yada, yada. Okay. So the next thing is I want to add text and such. So let's do that. So I've made all these extrusions. These are all different things. Fine, fine, fine. let's start a couple of new sketches here. And this is why I would prefer personally to make these intentionally separate sketches. It keeps things separate and makes it easier for me to navigate. You choose how you want to work, but if you're trying to make like a single image and extrude all that, I would keep that all as mostly one sketch, or at least major features on separate sketches. This would be a major feature change. So I want to make, looking from the top down, oops, I want to make this as kind of a badge here and add my text. All right, so let's start a sketch. I can hide the existing bodies starting on that front plane here. Now, problem is this circle isn't quite centered in, or rather this canvas isn't quite centered at the origin point in my sketch, or in my sketch plane, the intersection between the x-axis, the red, and the y-axis, the green. So it's harder to use a center point circle, because if I try to get right there in the center, you can see it's close, but not really. Now, honestly, this is close and it's perfectly fine. You choose how you want to work. I don't like that. So instead, what I'm going to do, go to create, I'm going to use a 2-point circle, which just allows me to choose 2 points, and it creates a circle between those. So I'm going to start somewhere at the top, right at the top of as close as I can get to the top of that circle there. Draw downward. It's a lot closer-ish. Frankly, it's close enough. All right, there we go. So now I've got this circle. If I want to make any of these outlines, now I have a center point. Let me hide the canvas, and you can see, let me hide those first sketches. Let's see here. Mothman, there we go. And we'll rename this one as border. If I can spell. There we go. Okay. So that's how you could do that. And you see this point floating out here. Good there. It's separate. All right. So this is how I can work from either making center point circles, or I could use offsets, stuff like that. But before I start all of that, let's see about taking a break, because I just checked the time. So let's pause here. Okay, quick pause. So in trying to get the circle a little closer, excuse me, I do want to add like a double layer, but I also want to make this text. So to get this double layer, and because this is in the center, I'd made that 2-point circle, but when I hide the canvas, you can see that there's my origin point, but now there's this little dot floating here. This is the center of the circle I created. So I have 2 options. I can create a center point circle based off of that and draw outward, or I can use a offset tool off of the outer one. And in this case, I think I'm going to use the offset because, and let's say -3. Yeah. Because again, if I use an offset based off of that outer circle, if I change the size of that outer circle, the offset will stay the same thickness of a band, meaning that it will always be 3 millimeters smaller than that outer circle. Just a couple ways of working. All right. So super duper, the reason I'm going to do that is because I can extrude that and make different sizes. But let's make some text. All right. So I'm still in the same same sketch environment. I don't have to start a new sketch. You can if you would like to. In this case, I'm not going to, because I don't feel like it. The text tool is just a big A here. Now you open this and you have 2 options, and the mouse over says so. You can create the text inside a rectangular frame, like creating some text block in like Word or whatever. You choose your program. You create you click and drag a box and create text inside of that, or you can create text along a path. That can be a pre-made geometric path like a circle, or it can be a squiggly line. So it's up to you. Your 2 options are here. The text toolbox comes up. Draw text is the first one, and along a path is the second one. For that, I need a path. So let me cancel out of this real quick, and I want to draw a circle. So in this case, I am going to choose a center point circle, but I want this to be a sketch line, or sorry, a construction line. I'm going to toggle the construction line, select in the center, and let's put it somewhere there-ish. Sure, 60, fine. Cool, all right. That's going to be my path. Open up text, select text along a path. Your only option is to select the path. There we are. Now your standard text toolbox comes up. And let's just say, well, you can see the sense there. Mothman, kick your feet off the ground. Sorry. So from here, it works like any other text tool in that you have your different fonts right on down to Centaur, Century. Ooh, stellar. Very fancy. Now, one thing is where it starts. You can go bold, you can go italic, all of that. Ooh, snazzy. The issue is that some texts, some fonts rather, will not translate to 3D printing as well because of the thickness of the nozzles. You can experiment with this. You'll find this out later. But in the meantime, we can play around with fonts. You have your standard heights and such like that. So if I want to make it smaller, there we go, Mothman. You can play with character spacing, the kerning, if you want to make that bigger or larger. Now, you have a couple of options. You have placement is above or below the path. You cannot place it through the path. So this is why it's good to be able to make your circle as you want. If that way you can go back and change the size of that circle and it'll recalculate for you. Fit to path will disperse the letters evenly along the length of your path. So if it's a circle, it'll spread them out evenly across a circle. If it's along a squiggly line, it'll disperse them along the length of that squiggly line. If you're turning this into, say, like a stamp, you have the option to flip them so they're reversed, and you have your standard alignments. Align left, center, right. Now, the problem is okay, well, I want it centered in my sketch. This is where it kind of gets a little screwy in that if it's you don't have a defined area, meaning you can't see a defined area of where that sketch or where that path starts. So if it's a circle, well, where's the start? Where's the end? Yeah, exactly. Essentially, I have found that the circle begins and ends as far as a path goes along the x-axis, and it's left of the y-axis. So over here on the negative quadrant, that's where it seems like that's where it starts and stops, because where you hit back and forth to a line left and a line right, you see it's on opposite sides of the x-axis. There you go. But if you want to center this, you can go up into your text box and just start hitting space until you get to where you like it. So kind of a pain, but that's how that works. You can always, if you want to center two things, like so this image is Mothman loves you. The loves you gets really tricky to space out between that. So I could do like, you see how that gets a little screwy. So I can keep adding spaces in between, but you see that flips and I can't flip them all or not. So this is where it's more convenient to just go ahead and make two texts. So let's go with something a little bit more standard. We'll just go with, yes, it's more boring, but it's a little bit more effective to work with. Okay, so hit there. All right. Mothman. I can do another one, select along the path. It's being used. Apparently, it will not let me, I forget this sometimes, it will not let me reuse that same path. That's obnoxious. I forgot that it does that. That's weird. So I guess apparently I'm gonna have to make a second circle right there. Same. That's seems like a really foolish thing. All right. Loves you. And let's just go ahead and tab along. It's upside down, so that means I can flip it and flip it. Oh my God, that is just a lot to deal with, isn't it? Why is it not moving now? Jeez. So unfortunately, a lot of this does get a little bit irritating. There we go. A little bit better. So I had to make it in two separate ones. That's a pain. All right, close enough. We're going to deal with what we got. Okay. Last thing about this is extruding. Now, right now, If I extrude this, this is all in one, these are all saved in a single sketch. If I go to extrude, say the base, it is not selecting the letters. Letters are treated a little bit differently than full sketch bodies are. Now, in this case, because so far all the bodies were going upwards positive, I'm going to go downwards a bit. I'll just say -3. That seems like a reasonable amount. It automatically wants to join. I'm going to leave that as a new body for the moment. Standard sketches disappeared. Now, again, I made that up here because I made this little border here because I wanted to add an extrusion going upward. So we'll go like 1. So it just adds a neat little ring there. That's all. So you can see I just added that neat little ring because what I'll probably end up doing is adding some fillets to this, which is just making round things out of square things. And we'll say like, I don't know, 0.5. There you go. So you see a fillet just makes, if I go to front, it just made those edges round. That's all. So if you want to round stuff over, that's a fillet. In this project, not as necessary, but it is handy. Now the text, however, operates a little differently. You can select all of the text as one sketch object. So let's say go 1. Now, the reason it's trying to cut is because that font overlaps the outside there. I don't want that. Let's go to new body. Now you can leave it as join, and I encourage that actually, because note the amount of bodies I have under the browser tree here. When I hit OK, and it's just new body, each letter gets its own new body. So that gets to be kind of a pain. So I encourage you to, when you extrude text, go ahead and join. That way you don't have all of those other parts. That's all. And I'll just make sure to add that as base. Okay. So the last thing on here is I want to make this a keychain. You can either just cut a hole somewhere. So like draw it right onto here. Maybe add a new sketch. Now, because all this is operating off that original plane, that works. Or I can actually select directly on a plane. I don't know why it keeps flipping that. Sometimes it does that. And in this case, I just need a hole. So let's just draw one right on the line there. Let's say 5 millimeters. Or make it a little bit bigger. 8. I don't know. Whatever. There you go. Hit finish sketch. Extrude that hole. Or that sketch. I want to go downward. And it's just going to cut right through. Or again, I can use extent type to object and just select the bottom. And it's going to cut a hole straight through. That way, if I ever want to change the thickness of that bottom, it will keep doing so. There you go. That works. If you want, add a fillet. Select the whole inside circle. I don't know, 0.5 again. Just rounds it out. Makes it a little bit easier. You can also, of course, go back into your sketch, that border one, and instead, maybe I want to add like a little outcropping here. I'm going to use a 2-point circle just because I can make that circle start right at the edge, go out a little bit, and let's say it's a little bit larger, 8. Now, if I want to make sure this is going to have a hole in it, I can use my offset. Go to there, shrink it in a little bit. Let's say -2, -1 maybe. There we go. And let's just connect this a little bit here. I'm going to draw a couple of lines, just something like there to there, and like there to there. Now, this is all kinds of wonky right now. Oops. This isn't even connected. This is where I can use my constraints here. Let's use tangent, select that line to there, snaps out there, and to there. Snaps out there. Great. Oh, wait. There we go. Nope. That moves stuff around. Don't want that. Repeat tangent, select to there. No? Oh, darn. Okay, well, that's obnoxious. For some reason, it is still wanting to select that. That is irritating. Don't know why it's doing that. Tangent that line to there. snaps back. And since that wasn't completely fixed, let's use the extend. That's going the other way. Well, that's just completely wrong. Tell you what, let's delete that, start that line over. Something like that, something like that. But if you wanted this to be tangent to the outside, I don't know why it wasn't snapping there, but as I draw this line outward, it'll snap to that outer ring. But as I keep dragging that along, get further and further, bam, and it snaps out here. Should hit, there we go. You can see the cursor change to the little tangent symbol. Now that's at a tangent. Now it's not up here, so I do want to go back, select there, and it keeps moving the circle. I don't want that. So that's really irritating. I don't know why it's doing that. Sometimes the tangent constraints work really funky because essentially you're adding, it's fighting for hierarchy of what needs to stay where it is and what it can move around. So that gets a little funky. If you run into stuff like that, what I have found is I'm going to switch that line to a construction line, and I'm going to start a new line. I'm going to use where that one starts because I know that's a tangent to there. And then I'm going to drag this line out until it meets the tangent point to my other circle. There we go. That makes it a lot easier to deal with sometimes. And again, if you're having trouble with this thing up here, delete it. Run a construction line straight through the center. Doesn't matter where to where, as long as it's straight through. And then what I can do is just use a mirror line. Select the object, select my mirror line, snaps over there. Boop, there we go. I forgot to turn that into a construction line. Why is that not closed? Oh, that's funky. Oh no, that's weird. But now I can try the tangent again. There we go, that worked, cool. Only it changed that one too. Oh my God, it's just getting frustrating now. Fine, I'll just delete all of you. Honestly, the only reason I was doing this, you could just draw this straight. Actually, tell you what, that might actually be a little bit easier to deal with at this point. I was just trying to make this a little bit stronger as a thing. So I'm just going to draw a line straight across where it hits my main circle. Ah, this is obnoxious. There. Yeah, come on, catch up. Great, now it's freezing on me. There we go. Now, when I'm moving this around, and you see that red dotted line appear, that's just showing you that it's definitely going 90 degrees out. Or, oops, not at 90, 180. There we go, because it's going straight that way, however it locates. And I just want to make sure it actually snaps to the edge there. If you want, you can make it overlap. Doesn't matter. You can always trim that stuff off of there. Makes it a little bit easier to deal with. And if I want to round this over, I can either leave it right there, which I think I'll do. Let's finish that sketch because that's just getting obnoxious. The only reason I was making this whole thing is so that way I can add a key ring part to the outside. So now I'll go ahead and extrude. I just want that outside of that circle and those two little parts that I added on. Let's go downward instead of upwards. Just going to drag it down a little bit. I don't know. 2 is too little, 3 is too much. So let's say 2.5. Only needs to be negative. That way, sure. Say join. Now this might be a problem later because it's floating like this. I might want to change that, but for right now, I'm going to leave it. That joined, so that is now part of the whole base here. If I want to leave this just as a little tab sticking up, that's fine. But one of the other things I can throw in is I can choose a fillet on that corner. And we'll do it on both sides here. Grab both of them the same thing. And instead of filleting inward, this will fillet outward. And see how it grows outward to blend to there. Makes it easier. A filleted corner is stronger than a 90-degree sharp corner. I can also add an additional fillet to the top and bottom there. Just select both faces. We'll say like 0.5 again, a little tiny one. Ooh, that might be a little bit too much. Does some weird stuff. So let's say 0.2. That's a little less crazy. So that just rounds things over. It's not a necessity, but however you choose to make a keyhole or a string hole, or however you want to tie this to something, that's the way to do it. Either just, you can cut a hole straight through the thing, or make a little feature on the outside. There you go. Easy way to work. So main thing being that extruding text does weird things. I encourage you to, when you extrude text, don't leave it as separate bodies, just actually allow the thing to join it automatically, unless you want to move stuff around or make alterations later. Otherwise, you'll end up with just a slew of stuff. If you want to print these, the last thing you need to make sure to do, combine. This is the join tool. It's combined. It'll do all the things that was at the bottom of your extrude toolbox. Just, you can do this all after the fact. It just makes you select a target body. Doesn't matter which one. We'll use the base. Select all the other things. You can go through individually or just use a selection box. Remember, if you select, click and hold from the left, it'll make a selection box, and everything that is completely inside that box, it will select. Or if you click and drag from the right, you see that it's instead yellow and a dotted line. Anything that touches, it'll select. So even if you're not all the way there, all the things. So it's selected all of them, or you can just go in and click them on the actual drop down tree. There you go. Compresses everything to one object, and we can just now make that Mothman keychain. There we go. So obviously there's a bunch of other things I want to do to this, but that's a pretty simple way of working. You can add text. I didn't add the loves you. I do want to go back and alter the size of this sketch circle here, because I want these to be a little bit further in. Remember, because that's all a parametric build, I can go in there and make that alteration by right-clicking, edit sketch. And let's see, that line, that is the 60 right there. So double click there. Let's make that 55 instead. Brings that down a bit. Finish sketch, recalculates. Now everything still at the end. It combined everything, joined everything, just now that's further away. So you can make those alterations as you need. It recalculates and you're good. If you run into errors, it'll usually tell you. You'll see a highlighted spot down at the bottom. You can fix it as you need, or we can figure it out next time. So hopefully that is a little bit, I know it kind of get jumped around a little bit because just addressing some different issues, but main things are joining parts together, how to get text in there, how to get text along a path. You do not have to make this a round object. You don't have to make this even a surrounding object around it. This was just a way that I wanted to add text onto it, and a convenient way to turn this into a keychain so it has some sort of like a hole to either add string or whatever have you. So however you know work, there you go. Remember that you can add appearances by shifting back over to appearance mode, pressing Shift in November. It goes kind of like the steely color. Press A to bring up the toolbar. You can drag and drop colors onto this. This is not a requirement right now, but if you wanted to make this all different colors and such, more power to you. To do that, you just literally drag and drop what I want onto the thing, and it makes it that color. This does not in any way affect the print itself. It just makes it fun. Oops, I accidentally dragged something around. That's all. Just makes things a little bit differently. But there you go. So you can change stuff around as you want, but that is not a requirement for right now. I'm going to save that. And done. And we'll make alterations later. All righty. So good luck with it.